Welcome to Muslims and Mental Health with Sister Heather, a groundbreaking program looking at mental health issues through the biopsychosocial spiritual paradigm.
Welcome to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Peace and blessings to all. Today we're going to talk about 10 ways to help your children study better. And we're going to be looking at integrating both parent support and the children's effort. So I would encourage you, again, to take notes on this episode, and you can play it back, as many times as you need to throughout the school year, because these tips will be helpful throughout the school year. And our shows this August are going to focus on back to school themes. And so as you watch the shows this month of August, stay tuned for the other episodes that are coming out, because they'll all be helpful to you as you prepare to go back to school. So when we first think about study habits, we want to consider assessing our children for what they really need. And one of the ways we can do this in a very simple way is to just take a brief assessment, a self-assessment, if you will. And I'm going to be posting that on nefshealertherapy.wordpress.com. This is a new site that we have generated to work as an adjunctive to this show to display different self-tests, meditation, stress management techniques, articles, podcasts. So you'll be able to use those resources anytime you'd like. Again, that's at nefshealertherapy.wordpress.com. And so some of those initial self-assessment statements will look like, I complete my homework assignments, and then you're going to fill in the blank. Like, do you do it all the time? Do you do it sometimes? Do you rarely do it? Do you never do it? And there are about 10 of those questions, or statements rather, and you can go through that with your child. Then you can score them afterwards, as you'll see on the printout online. And the one thing I really want to encourage parents here to know is that we've all heard of IQ tests, and that those IQ tests are tests that assess one's intelligent quotient or their ability to do something. But one of the things that, or two things rather, that those tests do not measure for are creativity and motivation. And so you can have a child who has maybe a lower IQ than other people, but with the use of their creativity and their motivation, they can exceed what these achievement test scores reveal. And so I just want to encourage all parents to, not be discouraged, and to encourage your children no matter where they are, because again, their creativity and their motivation can make up for other things that are not assessed in a normal IQ test. And so with your work together, you can accomplish a lot and stay positive. So that leads us into step one. Step one is belief. And when it comes to coping skills research, what we know is that what one believes about their ability to do things matters much more than their actual ability. And so encouraging your children to believe in themselves, the children themselves believing in themselves, is tantamount to achievement. And so what you want to do is to start with this belief concept is to make a plan. So one thing you can do with children, and I want to encourage parents, as your children are at different stages of life, you're going to be more or less directive. So with your younger children, you're going to be a lot more directive. And as your children get older, you're going to want to join more with them. In other words, make it more of a coming together to make these plans. And then as they get near the end of high school and beginning of college, you're going to want to let go even more to assist them. And so it is a sort of spectrum depending on what age your child is, but you're going to want to, deal with them on the level where they are. And so one of the things that you can do with most children is you can make a plan and have them write down all their current courses that they're going to be taking. So in the fall, we're going to write down all the fall courses. Of course, if they're in elementary, they're going to have pretty much the same courses all year long, but you can still write down the courses. And then you want to project what grade they want to achieve. So this is a great place to start. So they can know where they want to go, and you can help them get there. So start by making your plan and write down your courses and then the grades you want to achieve. And then the other thing you can do with this step is to share that with other family members that you trust, or extended friends outside the family who you trust that you want to have influencing your children. Because oftentimes that outside influence can be more influential than coming directly from the parent. And so you want to have as much support as you can for your child. And if you can identify those people and have them involved from a very young age, all the way through high school. So as your children start to separate and pull away in their own identity, you still have a support system for them that is developed. Even if they start to take less from you directly, that extended support system will be able to influence them as well. So step 2 is organization. You want to make sure, of course, that you have all the supplies you need. Most schools give these on their websites, or they give them at the beginning of the school year, but you want to make sure that you have the adequate supplies that you need both at school and at home, or any other study environment that you're going to have. You want to also avail yourself of a student planner. Now, children in pre-K and K, in the younger elementary grades are not going to use this as much, but starting at about 3rd grade, student planners can actually be quite effective. And so you're going to want to have your kids start using them to have a sense of organization where they can write down their assignments, they can plan out their assignments, and they can also add in any extracurricular activities they're doing to keep track of their time. You can break down larger assignments into chunks. So for example, when we get to the middle school and the high school levels, when children are being given papers or projects, it's good to teach them how to take that large assignment and then break it into chunks. So we have a paper, and we're going to start with the topic of the paper, and then what does the body of the paper look like, the supporting evidence, and just kind of help them break it down into chunks so they're not doing it the night before, several hours before. They can do it over a period of time, and then it becomes less burdensome, and hopefully they can do it with enough preparation where they can do revisions and learn how to really write. So breaking your assignments down into smaller chunks. And then also using a 3-ring notebook. And sometimes like even sheet protectors are helpful for this. So you take your notes, you can put them in the 3-ring notebook. That way they don't get lost. And the sheet protectors are great because then also if something gets spilled on the notebook or whatever, the notes are protected as well. I have even seen students use this at the collegiate level as well. Also, you want to get numbers for the classmates so that if you're ever sick or you are unsure about an assignment, you have the resource outside the school hours to connect and find out what you might be missing. And you want to keep your locker and your backpacks neat. Now, at school, it's going to be a little more difficult for parents to monitor the locker, but you can and should ask to see your child's backpack. So what you want to do is, just ask your child if you can see your backpack. And if they are a little bit older, you're going to want to do this in a more cooperative way and get their buy-in in terms of explaining to them that this is part of organization. And we do know from research that if a child is more organized, they do perform better. And so, you're going to just want to open it up and look inside and see, is it neatly organized? Are there papers everywhere? Is there food in their backpack? All these kind of things will tell you something about how they're spending their day, and you can help them then organize and spend their day more wisely. What you want to see, ideally, is that all their notebooks are in neatly and that you don't have crumpled up papers or straggling papers. If you see that, what you want to do is get folders. And sometimes it's good to have an in and an out folder. So you have a folder for what is incoming, what the students receive from their teachers, and whether it be homework or other papers that need your attention, and then have an out folder. So once they complete their assignments, they can go in the out folder, and that way everything stays neatly organized and in place for the student. And then lastly, in this step, you want to prepare for the next day. So whether that be part of the nightly hygiene routine that your children have, or something they do when they first get home from school, whatever works best for your family. But it's good to prepare them for the next day. That way they don't have to be worried or anxious about the next morning. And so that's step 2. Step 3 is time management. Now, when we're looking at time management, you want to use, what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about what the kids do at school. And you want to teach your children how to use that time to their best ability at school. And one of those ways is to use their class time and their study hall time to their advantage. And what I mean by that is not just for the purpose of studying, but to ask the questions that they have while they're at school. The system itself is created to help the student. And so sometimes children are shy or ambivalent about asking questions of the authority figures in the school. And this is a time where they can really ask those questions, because once the bell rings and they're at home, they don't have access to those people who have the actual direct answers that will impact their studies. And so really encouraging them to develop the communication skills with their teachers and their administrative members of their school. Also, to create the best study time and environment. So for your family, whatever culture you may have at home, you can decide, well, is it best for my child to study right after school lets out? Or is it better to wait and study a little later at night? Identify what time works best for your family, set aside the time, and create the environment for that. So what does that environment look like? Does my child have a desk in their room? Do I want them studying in their bedroom? Do I want them studying at the kitchen table? Where will this work best for our family? What we have found is that when students study where their parents are available to them, they have the best results, typically. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then you want to eliminate noise and distractions. And so oftentimes children like to have the TV on, or they like to have the music on while they're studying. And with the exception of classical music, there is no research that indicates that's actually better for children. And so you want to keep noise and distraction to a minimum. If they do need some extra noise, because there are children who actually do study better with some kind of noise, there is research that shows that classical music or music that doesn't have singing in it, so it's just instrumental music, that will actually help. But beyond that, there is no evidence that other types of music, and certainly not where they're singing where the words will distract their thoughts, is helpful for them. Okay, step 4, we're going to look at the 1-2-3 rule. Well, it's what I call the 1-2-3 rule. And this includes being at school every time, every day on time. That's the first part of the rule 1-2-3. The second part is knowing your teacher's expectations. So it's really important, and they change as the children get older and they have more teachers, to know the difference and the expectations of the teachers. And often children, especially when they're transitioning, when they've had one teacher all year long and then they transition to having more than one teacher, they need to learn how to know the differences between teachers. So for example, I'll give you an example. One teacher might expect you to be in your seat, ready to go, ready to participate as soon as the bell rings. Other teachers, that first 3 or 4 minutes are just expecting students to file in and get settled. And so that's one example in a way to know a teacher. Another is, what do they expect in terms of turning in assignments? Exactly on time, a little leeway. I mean, what are their expectations? And so you want to coach your children around, how to ask those questions, how to understand that, and then, even follow up and ask them, what they know about the different teachers they have. And lastly, of the 1, 2, 3 rule is have all your supplies in your homework and be ready to participate in class. So make sure that you're prepared. When you come to class, you should have all of those things ready and ready to go, and develop a system that supports that. So I'm going to continue with these steps, but right now we're going to take a short break for our sponsor. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. Today we are looking at 10 ways parents can help their children study better. So we're going to continue with step 5, and that is how to become a good note taker. One of the things that you want to teach your children to do, and you can practice this at home actually, is how to learn to be an active listener. And how you can tell if somebody is actively listening to you is after you've talked to them for, let's say, 2 minutes, you can ask them to reflect back to you what you just said to them. Now, if they accurately reflect more or less what you did say back to them, back to you, then you can tell if they're actively or attentively listening to you or not. So this is something that you can start practicing at home, but you want to teach them to do that at school. And also the note-taking itself helps you pay attention. So we know that that people speak faster than they can think. And so if you're taking notes and you're writing them down, it will actually help you retain the information better than if you were to just sit and listen to a lecture. And there are certain things that you can also listen for, right? So you can listen for the main points, and oftentimes these points sound like the main point is, or what you really need to know is, and start training your child to listen for those main points to take down in their notes. Another thing to consider to be a good note taker is sitting in front of the class if possible. Now, not everybody can sit in front of the class, but if you find that your child has a little bit harder time hearing or understanding or listening to the information the teacher's giving, request that your child sit at the front of the classroom. For children who get easily distracted, if you think about it, if you sit at the back of the classroom, your vision takes in more information. So if you're sitting in the front of the classroom, your vision's going to have a lot less to consider. And so that's one of the reasons why it's also advantageous to sit at the front of the classroom. You want to teach your children also to be aware of their body language. How are they sitting in the class? Are they sitting like they're participating, they're ready to go? Or are they just kind of slouched down, like, I'm not really sure I want to be here? that's something you can actually practice at home as well and find out before they go back to school, where they are with that. And then step 6, we want to work on our children with learning how to read to learn. Some children get this really interesting idea when they're younger that if you read fast, then that's what you're trying to achieve. You want to just be a fast reader. And over time, of course, it is helpful if you can read more quickly to read more information. But if you're not understanding it, then you're just reading fast for nothing. And so we want to teach our children actually how to read to learn. And there are 3 key points to remember in learning how to read to learn. And those 3 points are to survey, to read, and review. So first we're going to survey the information that we're reading. Like just glance over it to see the overall topic and picture of what it is we're going to read. Then we want to read the actual material and take our time with it and read at a pace that we understand it, we comprehend it. And then lastly, we're going to review it. So go back to the reading and try to pick out what were the main points being said in this article or this book or whatever else you're being asked to read. It's good practice. And then step 7, we're going to look at studying for you. And so what does this mean? What does studying for you mean? It means to learn your own study style, learn your own learning style. There are a few different learning styles, and it is good to understand which one you are. I will post something on nesthealertherapy.wordpress.com for you, a little self-examination, and you can see if you can figure out what your own learning style is to kind of help you research that. But you want to learn what your learning style is. So for example, some of the learning styles are that some people tend to be more auditory, where they learn by hearing things. Other people are more tactile, where they learn by actually putting their hands on things and feeling them and having that sensation along with what they're hearing. So, and then the majority of people tend to be more visual learners, where you learn by seeing and hearing at the same time. So it's good to go on a line and assess for yourself which type of learning style you have. You want to create your best environment. And so when I say that, again, we're looking at the environment where you're studying. Does it have all the supplies you need? Is it quiet? Is it the same time, same place kind of atmosphere? One of the things you want to do with your learning environment is make it a habit. And so I'm going to study at this time every day in this place and kind of create that environment that's consistent and regular. You want to not procrastinate. Procrastination has gotten many people into some binds, and you want to just make sure that you're planning out enough of your time so that you have enough time to finish everything you need to in a timely manner. And then another part of studying for yourself is learning how to take a test. And so one of the things you want to ask yourself is, what is the test asking of you? And then you want to consider if it's asking you to memorize things. So if your teacher is giving you a list of things that you have to memorize for the test, a good way to study for those kind of tests is using flashcards. And it's good to get in the habit of making flashcards. This is a good tool for your educational career. And then also, another thing that we learned through research is that if you practice taking the test in the testing environment that you're going to take the test, so in other words, if you practice in the classroom where you're going to take the test, you will actually have better results. So as much as you can do that, that works to your advantage as well. In addition, if you have true-false questions, you want to look for key words that might stand out to you that make it true or false. And you can even write, on your test what you think the correct answer is. Time utilization, that's another important part of studying for your best self. You want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to do all the things that you need to do in the day. So if you decided to take on sports, make sure that you've scheduled enough time for your studies at home at night, and not so that you have enough time to do all the things that you want to do. Learning to write and developing public speaking skills. These are things to work on outside of the classroom to make your studies the best for yourself. Step 8, becoming a good test taker. Again, we discussed some of these ideas, but number 1, you want to be prepared. You want to develop a plan. And there's the 5-step rule that I apply and ask students to apply when it comes to taking tests. And this 5 rules are very simple for you to remember. That first, you want to scan the questions on the whole test. Look at all the questions on the test. Then answer the ones that you know well first. Then go back and the ones that you haven't answered, read the question and see if you can answer the question without looking at the answers. If it's multiple choice, for example, read the question, try to answer it on your own. If you can, great, and then you can look at what's available and find your answer. If you don't know the answer, try to first eliminate those answers that you don't know and try to at least get it down to 2 answers where you can pick the best choice. And then choose your answer is the last of the 5 steps. In true false, again, we look for keywords. In essays, you want to read each question first. Start with the easiest of the essays that you just know you can answer, get that out of the way. If there's an essay question that's a little harder for you, then start brainstorming. And then if you find one that you really have no idea, it just totally stumps you, start writing about the subject that the question is asking about, and hopefully that will trigger in your mind, some of the information that you have in there, but you've just kind of forgotten at the moment. And so that often works to bring up the information, and you can write the best answer that you can. Step 9 is test anxiety. Test anxiety is a really important matter. It's often overlooked, and this is where parents can come in very handy with their children, because test anxiety can be the difference between getting the grade you want and not getting the grade you want. Oftentimes, when we find students are having trouble with test taking, it's because they're anxious before the test. Now, a little anxiety is actually good. We want to have the good stress, the eustress, the EU stress. That puts positive hormones into our body, and you want to have a little bit of agitation when you're getting ready to take a test so that you have the motivation to do the test. But too much is not a good thing. Too much will make us answer things incorrectly or maybe speed through the test. And so one of the things you can teach your children to do is like a progressive relaxation before an exam. And this is something they can learn before they go to school and then apply it at school. And the progressive relaxation will include relaxing all the muscles of the body one by one. And they'll basically do this by telling themselves to do this in their own head. And then by the end of it, they will feel more relaxed and be able to focus more clearly on the test. We will have an actual guided relaxation technique available on nafshealertherapy.wordpress.com. So you can go there and you can practice with your children. You can do it together. It actually is good for everyone. But that will actually help if they have people that have test anxiety before tests. And I can't stress enough the importance of de-stressing your children when it comes to test anxiety. Step 10, teaching our children to ask for help, the SOS. Many students forget that the school itself is a system. Many parents forget this as well. You have administrators, you have teachers, you have your children, and you have the parents. You all are working in a team together to create the best environment, the best learning for your child, to get the most out of their education. So work the system. If you teach your children to ask for help when they need it, and as parents, work with the teachers and the administrators to get the best education for your kid. So if you feel like there's something going on with the teacher or there's something in the school environment, don't hesitate to talk to the teacher or the principal and make sure that system is working well. So that concludes our 10 steps, but I want to also give you a few tips as well. So a few extra tips for parents that you can do that don't include the children are showing interest. Showing interest in what your children are doing and showing interest in the school goes a very long way with children. And discuss the goals that we talked about in the beginning. Discuss and set up the goals. And you want to revisit this throughout the year. So it's not just we're doing this in August for the fall, but we'll revisit it throughout the year and see if the goals are the same. How can we adjust them? And be available to help. So when you're creating that environment and that time for your kids, you want to also create time for yourself to be available for them and encourage them to be involved in school. And sometimes you yourself can even get involved with like a PTA or other organizations on the school campus so that your kids see you modeling what you want them to do. You want to monitor their activities, and we are going to have another episode later this month talking about school safety, and this is really important. So you want to monitor the activities, both of how they're spending their time, like when it comes to their study time, who the people they're spending time with, just kind of monitor what's going on with them. You want to work with your school. Again, work with that system. And if your child is not doing well, you want to find out why. You don't want to wait until halfway through the school year and find out why. You want to find out why right away. So here are some of the things that you can do. One thing is you don't want to nag your children about their grades. You want to work with them, because if you start complaining to your children about their grades or you nag them about their grades, they will just shut you out. They'll tune you out, and that won't be an effective strategy for communication between you and your child. You want to make sure that your child is not allowed to miss school unless necessary. And so no just, free absences. You want to make sure if they are missing school, there's a really valid reason for missing it. Try not to criticize the teachers in front of the children. We've all probably experienced a child having a teacher who maybe was not the right fit for the child, or the teacher had some issues that had been unaddressed that were negatively affecting the children in the classroom. But if you criticize the child or the teacher in front of the child, what often happens is the children lose respect for that teacher, and that then turns into a very toxic situation because the child has to be in this classroom with this teacher for the entire school year. So you want to refrain from any of those criticisms in front of your child. And so another thing that has become very relevant in recent years is the successes of the children and the failures of the children being their own. Many times parents have taken on their children's success or failures as statements on themselves. But as we know, these are individuals with their own genetic makeup, with their own reality, and you have to allow them to develop as individuals. Once we get past the breastfeeding stage and children become more and more detached, we also have to see them as the individuals they are and let them stand and fail based on their own success. It is not a statement on you as a parent in terms of your value or who you are. It might be a statement on how much time you're giving them and available to them and monitoring them, but it's not a statement on you as personally as a person. So allow them to stand on their own. And then have realistic expectations. The truth is, as the saying goes, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And so if you were a really bad student yourself growing up in school, don't project onto your children that you want them to be superior in some way that you yourself were not able to achieve. Be realistic about, what your expectations are in that regard, and, try to accommodate the reality of your family's situation. Now, we also have identified 4 key reasons in the school systems why children have difficulty. So when you go back to the question of, well, why is my child having difficulty? Here are 4 reasons to consider that they might be and to investigate, okay? So one is attendance. If your children are not attending school, they're not getting the education that they've signed up for, and they may miss assignments, they may miss key information. And so attendance is one of the largest ones of why children have trouble in school. Second is taking the right courses, especially as children have the ability to choose courses in junior high and high school. They may choose courses that are not a good fit for them, and so they will not be performing well in them. And so that's something to really look at. Some schools have more academic counselors than others, and there's more attention spent on this, but you as a parent can also empower yourself to be a part of that process. And I would encourage you to as well. And then 3 is accountability. Are your children being responsible? Do they have accountability for their work? Are you following up on it? Are you making sure that they're on track for where they need to be? And then lastly, another issue is substance use and abuse. Oftentimes we find this as being one of the more salient issues of why children are having trouble in schools these days. And so there are many ways to discover if this is the case. One, there are self-test kits you can get at the drugstore. You can take them to your primary care physician. You can, monitor and observe their behavior. And if you suspect it, the best thing to do is ask. So this concludes another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. I want to give a special thank you to Judith Thomas and her family for supporting Muslims and Mental Health. And I want to ask you all to share your feedback, your comments, concerns, and any questions you have at nafshealertherapy@gmail.com. That's NAFSHEALER therapy@gmail.com. Thank you.